Namaste, everyone. Thank you for joining in what is going to be the last class of this course on Kala Sarpa. So we have had a long journey, and this journey will, of course, continue, but this course is going to end tonight. Okay, so the remedy for Kala Sarpa, of course, I'll not be sharing in this class. I'll be putting out a separate video on YouTube for that. So that would, of course, be free, and you can check that out once it's uploaded. Okay. So as I said, this is going to be the last class, and you can still ask your doubts towards the end of the session. And after we end this class, I'll send a thank you message in the group, and we'll be deleting it, and we'll be starting a new course soon, which will, of course, be free for all, as I had mentioned. Okay, so let's begin with the daily Shanti mantra from the Upanishads. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunakatu, Sahaviryangara Vavahai, Tejasvi Nada Ditamastu Ma Veda Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, so we pay our respects to the Nagas who form this very special yoga called the Kala Sarpa, and influences each and every one of us on this planet. Okay, so we come to Kala Sarpa with Rahu in the 12th house and Ketu in the 6th house. Okay, so Rahu represents desire and obsession, while Ketu denotes ambivalence and detachment. And with Rahu in the 12th and Ketu in the 6th, it will indicate a bias for privacy, sanctuary, secrets, and connections to unseen worlds, sometimes at the cost of one's health, environment, co-workers, and competitive spirit. Now, since Rahu represents an appetite for worldly experience, whether it is money or power or sex, presence of Rahu in the 12th house will imply that such primal impulses cannot be indulged in publicly. So one may experience a kind of, one may crave for an experience, knowing it is socially unacceptable, yet suppress the desire to avoid exposure or any kind of censure. Okay. Sometimes these people may also harbor desires without acknowledging their existence, acting on them unconsciously. And sometimes they seemingly may be possessed by demons that they cannot control. At times, one might also acknowledge wickedness as an aspect of their personality, but compartmentalize the behavior so that it does not, disturb their professional or social life. Okay. So whatever the scenario, it is like an apartment dweller with a pet python. Okay, so as long as it is caged, all is well. Yet other residents of the building might be horrified to know what lives down the hall, a primal creature that might get loose. Now the 12th house rules the feet. So Rahu in this house may indicate discolorations, deformities, or infections. Okay, foot problems can also include bone spurs or bunions or hammer toes, ingrown toenails, plantar warts, osteoarthritis, and even athlete's foot. Okay, so Rahu also, is the destroyer of bones, because it is the one who consumes the sun ruling bones. So Rahu, it is anti-sun, so it is anti-bones. So it can also indicate some structural foot problems, which are very typical with people having Rahu in the 12th house. Okay, 12th house also rules the left eye. So given other malefic influences on Rahu, it can indicate problems with that eye. For example, some congenital defect or injury or infection. Okay. The 12th house also rules pleasures of the bed. So since Rahu is restless and erratic, this may reflect upon the native's irregular sleep patterns or his or her sex life. Okay. Now Rahu in the 12th can be dangerous because the serpent head strikes from an invisible quarter. So people engaged in shamanic practices may deplete their energies and lose physical vitality. If you're a medium, you can suffer breakdowns due to strains on the nervous system. If someone is into alcohol or drugs, these people, they may often overdose and wind up in hospital emergency rooms. Okay. This can also give nymphomaniac tendencies. That means people who are addicted to sex. And sometimes, even if people are nymphomaniacs, they might suffer from sexual exhaustion. Okay. So, if you're in pursuit of Kundali awakening and you have Rahu in the 12th house, you may sometimes have psychotic hallucinations. So Rahu also represents primordial impulses which are not well received in public. Okay, Rahu is very antisocial. So the native learns early on that some aspects of, of the demonic can only be unleashed in secrecy. Say, for example, sex. It's a very private activity where the native with an auticide can restrict their peculiar desires to the bedroom. Okay. And these natives may be obsessed with privacy, keeping certain aspects of his or her life secretive. Okay. And if these activities are marginally ethical, they may camouflage them under the guise of more acceptable behavior. And if such activities cannot be kept secret, then these natives may conceal their identities to protect their reputation. Okay. And Rahu in the 12th house also indicates incognito traveling. Okay. These people, they might shun social media to avoid exposing aspects of his personal life. For example, appearance or relationships or career or politics or social circle. And these people may also use an avatar and become a lurker, checking out people without revealing himself or herself. Now, Rahu is also an imposter. Okay. So the native may misinterpret his or her capacity for divination, psychic ability, sex, spiritual guidance, etc. Now, Rahu is obsessive and compulsive, and the 12th house, it rules self-undoing, addictions of one kind or the other that can plague one's life. For example, alcoholism or, drug addiction, excessive sleeping, food addiction, or gambling or sexual addiction. Now, if Rahu is linked to the second lord, substance abuse is likely. Okay. If Rahu is linked to the fifth lord, then gambling is very much possible. If Rahu is linked to the seventh lord, then sex is possible. So it will depend on what planet Rahu is associating with. Now, addictions can often result in severe financial problems. It can make the native incur expenses that exceed their income. And as a result, these people may be caught in a cycle of mounting debts. Okay. So Rahu also represents power, while the 12th house rules loss. So bondage and captivity may be recurring themes in the life of such a native. And although imprisonment for criminal infraction is possible, it might just, might just as likely be a recreational behavior in which the individual enjoys the bondage experience. For example, you can think about BDSM, role playing, right? Domination, sadism, and masochism, where bondage is pleasurable for either or both the participants. Okay. So now in some cultures like the Japanese art of kinbaku, rope bondage is fetished. It is a kind of fetish that people enjoy, right? So serpents are capable of stealth, sudden attack and overcoming prey by strangulation or poisoning. So Rahu in the 12th suggests someone capable of, raping the other person on a date, or kidnapping, or forcible confinement, and other forms of captivity involving bondage, isolation, drugs, and sexual abuse. Okay, so it gives a very psychotic mentality. Okay, most of the serial killers will have this combination if you see their charts. Now, Rahu in the 12th is also a taboo breaker with a rich fantasy life. Okay, so the native may desire sex in forbidden or exotic places like ashrams, cemetery, foreign country. So there is a sex tourism industry that runs, that is responsible for the economic activities of a country. For example, in Thailand, okay, halfway house, hospital, meditation space, opium den, spa, or even in prison. Okay. So, activities which are intensely private, activities which are intensely sexual, these people, they constantly have a need to break taboos in order to pierce the veil of reality and see the other side. And taboos include adultery, same-sex relationships, underage partners, or even, sex without consent. Now, Rahu, if it is malefic in the 12th house of solitude, then the native may suffer from loneliness, isolation, or even segregation. And this could be for innocent reasons, for example, immigration, or as a consequence of a crime, and that can result in imprisonment or serving jail time. Okay. And with Rahu in the 12th, the native seeks sanctuary in ashrams, bedrooms, cloisters, foreign lands, hospitals, hostels, monasteries, or refugee camps. Okay. And the purpose of solitude is to find peace through astral travel, communion with ancestral spirits, dreams, meditation, prayer, sleep, spiritual guidance, or trance. Okay. Now, such a native can be a weaver of divination, dreams, imaginary worlds, and psychic phenomena. And from a place of sanctuary like a bedroom or retreat or even a trance-like state, those people with special talents may retrieve wisdom from a higher realm. Okay. And the ability to transport oneself can be found in dreams or typical products of human imagination, like imagery or music or poetry or stories. All right. Now, the one having Rahu in the 12th may seek recognition for the ability to penetrate the unseen world. For example, the bibliomancer or the clairvoyant or the divinist, the diviner, the exorcist, the geomancer, the intuitive, the necromancer, the oracle, the prophet, the psychic, the shaman or the soothsayer, sorry, not the toothsayer, right? So Rahu is all about power, okay? And the 12th house, it rules dreams, certain spiritual practices are felicitated with this presence of Rahu in the 12th house. For example, conscious or intentional dreaming as practiced by the Tibetan Buddhists. Okay. So some natives with legitimate talent or positive intentions can overextend themselves and burn out. Okay. Others may be frauds or imposters. So their camouflage roles eventually become unsustainable and they find themselves in over their heads. For example, accounts of Western magic like Aleister Crowley offer many anecdotes about aspirants who ran afoul of dark forces beyond your ability to control. Okay. Now, Rahu is also a wanderer, and the 12th house rules the feet, it foreign people as well as moksha. So the native may undertake a walking pilgrimage of holy sites. Okay. Rahu also represents science and technology, particularly medicine. So in the 12th, it can manifest as expertise in medical science. Okay. For example, a podiatrist. And alternatively, given Rahu's rulership of toxins, the specialization might involve poisons and their antidotes, for example, narcotics or soporifics or anesthetics, and even hallucinogens. Okay, this can also include psychotropic drugs, for example, ayahuasca or LSD or peyote. Okay. Now, Rahu craves for recognition. Rahu wants to be recognized. And in the 12th house, it suggests someone whose reputation is made in a sanctuary, for example, a hospital or a clinic or a spa, or even a holiday resort or an ashram or a jungle hideaway, or maybe insane asylum or prison. Okay. And familiar with routes or procedures to access what's hidden, the native could be some sort of guide, for example, a diviner, a dream interpreter, a guru, a pathfinder, a psychologist, a shaman, a spiritual medium, a translator, or a visionary, or even a yogi. Okay, don't think that Rahu in the 12th is always negative. It can make you a yogi. Okay, now with Rahu in the 12th, power and pleasure are sought via hidden means. For example, backroom deals, blackmail, clandestine operations, espionage, extortion, secret affairs, undeclared wars, and veiled threats. And the native is fascinated with what happens behind closed doors. So the areas of espionage, international intrigue, psychology, and sex, they are very appealing for these natives. Okay. On a mundane level, this can indicate intermediaries between familiar and strange locales. For example, ambassadors, Amnesty International advocates, anthropologists, bridge builders, doctors without borders, ferry operators, foreign aid workers, people working in the UNICEF or UN organizations, hunting guides, immigration lawyers, interpreters, pilots, and even tour guides. Okay, now Rahu is also an interloper who invades another's private space. So this can indicate careers of an anthropologist, archaeologist, burglar, explorer, grave robber, mentalist, private investigator, psychologist, sex therapist, spy, tomb raider, or even trespasser. Okay, so this is all about Rahu in the 6th house. Rahu in the 12th house. So with Rahu in the 12th house, Ketu will come in the 6th house. So the 6th house rules the intestines. So Ketu here indicates problems in the abdominal area. For example, appendicitis, colitis, Crohn's disease, etc. So Ketu is sharp and piercing, which implies a puncture wound or a surgery in the abdominal area. And since 6th house is this place of small animals, this could also reflect injuries from pets. For example, a cat scratching you or a dog biting you. Okay. And the native may disregard the advice of conventional medicine and may rely instead on traditional Ayurvedic treatments, including including Chinese medicine, shamanic healing practices, and so on. Now, 6th house also rules the siblings of the mother, okay, especially the uncle, the maternal uncle. Okay, so some of them may be very eccentric, peculiar, or even unorthodox. Okay, these siblings or these relatives may also suffer from illness, financial insolvency, and even criminal tendencies. Okay. And these people, they have a high tolerance for conflict, but it can indicate a perpetually troubled marriage, never relieved or resolved by divorce. And with Ketu in the sixth, people can have very little regard for marital fidelity. And, because Rahu is in the 12th house and is looking at the 6th house, so there is a drive, for sexual indulgence. And these people, they feel no compassion for the emotional wounds inflicted upon the betrayed partner. Okay. 6th house also rules pets. So with Ketu here, the native may be ambivalent, choosing to have no pets or having very little inclination to provide them with proper care. And even if the native has pets, then they will likely favor exotic species requiring minimal maintenance. Okay. And what are those species requiring maintenance? Lizards, reptiles. Okay. They demand no affection. They don't require daily feedings and can be left alone for long periods. Okay. So Ketu reflects apathy. So people having Ketu in the sixth, they do not appreciate social services. Okay. So as a result, they can show very little concern for crime, death, disease, exploitation of others, infidelity, injury, litigation, medicine, pollution of the environment, poverty, slavery, or wars. Okay. And consequently, these people may ignore the advice of doctors, environmentalists, lawyers, police, etc. These people may also turn a blind eye to the suffering of the underprivileged, for example, the unemployed, sick, criminal, immigrants, and outcasts of the society. And they are unlikely to support social welfare programs and are more inclined to take a laissez-faire, which is likely sinking or swimming philosophy. Okay. Now, Ketu also reflects detachment from the plight of the sick, disenfranchised or victims of natural disasters and war. And it's positive for those who deal with this on a regular basis. So while the average person may be overwhelmed by daily exposure to human suffering, it's routine for relief workers, emergency room staff, social workers, police, and military. So these people, they are not cold-hearted, okay, but they function very professionally, relieving suffering without being incapacitated by the sight of it. Okay. Now, Ketu is very indecisive. So the native is reluctant to engage in conflict. For example, guarding his or her health against disease, responding to accusations, countering legal suits, defending himself or herself against physical attacks, or, thwarting breaches of security, whether personal, professional, or political. Okay. And there's a problem Ketu gives because in this position, the native usually underestimates the strength of enemies. For example, plaintiffs in legal suits, opponents in sports or physical combat, spurned lovers or spouses, or even the armed forces of warring nations. So by downplaying the opposition, these people may suffer the consequences of having delayed reactions. Okay. And these people may have an incoherent response to death. Okay, very incoherent response to that, illness or litigation, and that may leave them with no defense to protect themselves. And although these people, they think that they are above the law, what happens? Karma eventually deals out with through its own rough justice, and as a result, they may find themselves in a hospital or debtor's prison or even a divorce court. Okay, these people are also can be very ambivalent about criminal associates who perpetrate crimes against humanity, thinking there is no consequence. But then guilt by association can lead to criminal penalties, including fines and imprisonment. And the workplace can be a severe disappointment for the native who may disparage his employees and co-workers, the office environment, employment benefits, etc. And since he does not care about employees, such a native is a poor candidate for human resources or labor relations role. But then if Ketu's dispositor aspects the sixth, this could provide the incentive to take action in such areas. Okay. And such natives may also end up taking a lot of advantage of the disenfranchised, thinking that they have no rights. And he or she could get involved in selling drugs to the addicts and the sick, loan sharking, human trafficking, prostitution, or even various forms of slave labor. For example, non-unionized work environments, cheap immigrant labor in sweatshops, offshore manufacturing, employing women and kids, and so on. Okay. And there is a lack of due diligence, which is symptomatic of Ketu in the sixth house. All right. These people, they can be accused of holding, professionals like doctors, lawyers in low regard. Okay. So they conveniently ignore such advice and then they pay the price. Okay. For example, this this native may fall sick and go to a doctor, but against his doctor's advice, he can self-medicate. Okay, suppose they are in a legal trouble, so rather than taking the counsel of his lawyers, they may end up going and defending themselves in court. Okay, so instead of alerting the police that he is being blackmailed, he can pay the criminal. All right, so somewhere down the road, of course, these people will regret their assumption that all these problems will just go away by a mere wish. Okay, so these people, they usually think that their problems can be wished away, but it is not usually the case. Okay, so we'll look at a few example charts and we'll then wrap up the class. Okay, just give me a couple of minutes. I'll just look into the Astro data bank and get the example charts ready. Okay, let's look at a few example charts here. I think people can see the screen. Yes. Okay. So this is Charles Lindbergh. Okay. And Shannon must be aware of him. Okay. He was an American aviator, military officer, author, inventor, explorer, as well as an environmental activist. Okay. Just hold on. Yeah. Okay. So in 1927, he shot to fame by making a non-stop flight of covering in which he covered around 3,600 miles in around 33.5 hours from New York to Paris alone in a single engine plane. And he won a handsome amount of $25,000 Orteig prize for the feat. And he also received America's Medal of Honor. Okay. Now, Lindbergh was the son of a US congressman and a school teacher, and he dropped out of engineering college to learn how to fly. He spent a year as a barnstorming stuntman, and after military flight training, he took a job as an airmail pilot. And after his famous transatlantic fight, he became an instant celebrity with a ticker tape parade in New York and a cross-country book tour, during which he was seen by a quarter of America's population. In 1932, his first-born son was kidnapped, and despite Lindbergh paying a heavy ransom, that boy was found dead. The kidnapper was caught, convicted, and executed, and the case helped make kidnapping a federal crime. Okay, and dogged by unwanted publicity, Lindbergh later took his wife and second son to Europe for 3 years of self-imposed exile. In the years prior to the Second World War, he argued for keeping America out of the looming war and expressed public admiration for Hitler's Germany. And that earned him a reputation as a neo-Nazi, for which he was blacklisted by the Roosevelt administration. Okay. Apart from his aviation exploits, Lindbergh was a prolific writer who wrote 15 books and won the Pulitzer Prize for the Spirit of St. Louis in 1954. He supported rocket research, invented a pump used in heart surgery, and was an early environmental activist. And years after his death, it was revealed that he had carried on a decade-long affair with 3 German women, with whom he had fathered 7 children in the period 1958 to 1967. So look at the chart. You see no planet shares the same sign as the nodes, and yet 2 of the 5 intervening signs are unoccupied. So this is a potential Kala Sarpa, and it is a Viloma type with all planets moving towards Ketu, and that makes it the starting point for analysis. No planet aspects the node to influence either yoga or dosha. Okay. Now Lindbergh was born into Ketu Dasha, Venus Antar Dasha. So he was directly, under the influence of Kala Sarpa. Ketu is in Aries, which is the Mula Trikona of Mars. Okay, and Mars is like Ketu, or Ketu is like Mars. And Venus is strong. It is retrograde with Digbala in the 4th house, where it forms Raj Yoga with Mars. So both the nodes are in a dignified position. Okay, Ketu is in Aries and Rahu is in its own nakshatra, and that gives Kala Sarpa a lot of energy. Okay, the nodal dispositors are also very strong. As I said, Mars is in its own nakshatra, and Mars also forms a Dhana Yoga with Mercury. Okay, Saturn in the influence of Saturn is very pervasive. Paired with Rahu, it forms Papa Kartari Yoga on the Lagna, and its association with the Moon creates Raja Yoga. Its exchange with Jupiter creates Parivartana Yoga. So you look at the bad state of Jupiter as the fifth lord and Karaka of children. It is debilitated in a Dusthana, associated with a malefic, and is flanked by malefics. So the fifth house is also flanked by malefics, right? So passion combinations aroused when the feminine planets Moon and Venus hook up with the animalistic planets Mars and Saturn, and these are very evident in the chart. Okay, Mars and Venus are together while Saturn is with the Moon, and it aspects Venus. So Mangal dosha arises from Mars position, which is relative to both the Lagna and Venus. Venus rules the 7th and the 12th house of sex and secrecy. And the sambandha between Venus and Rahu in the 12th is revealing. Okay. Rahu is in a sign of Venus, while Venus is in a Rahu nakshatra. So this notion of foreign, distant, and secret lovers is invoked with this connection between Venus and the Kala Sarpa. Okay. Now 3 planets, Mercury, Venus, and Rahu, they are all occupying the nakshatras of Rahu. Okay, so for a third of all their antardashas, these antardasha lords repeatedly invoke the effects of the nakshatra lord Rahu, bringing up the themes of foreign travel, exile, loss, and secret love affairs. Okay, now Lindbergh's chart has 3 exaggerated planets: a dark moon, a debilitated Jupiter, and a retrograde Venus. Okay, and many of the major events in his life occurred in the periods of the nodes, planet linked to the nodes, and planets in exaggerated condition. Okay. Now, Venus Dasha from the age of 5 to 25 saw Lindbergh make his mark in life. In Venus Saturn at the age of 20-21, he dropped out of college and learned to fly. In Venus Mercury at the age of 21 to 24, he attended military flight school. He had 2 accidents and he began work as a male pilot. And since both Saturn, Venus, and Mercury are Trikona lords in the 4th house of vehicles, he was fortunate to walk away from his accidents. Okay, in Venus Ketu at the age of 25, in the conjoined period of these grahas linked to the Kala Sarpa, he became world famous. He flew his plane, as I said. The spirit of his plane was named the Spirit of Saint Louis from New York to Paris, winning the Orteig prize of $25,000 for a solo transatlantic flight. And he was promoted to colonel in the US Army Air Corps Reserve and received the Distinguished Flying Cross. Okay. During Sun Dasha, from the age of 25 to 31, he garnered a lot of fame, both for merit and misfortune. Okay. In Sun, he published a book followed by a US tour in which he was seen by 30 million people. In Sun Moon, he received America's Medal of Honor and was named in Times Magazine as Times Magazine's youngest man of the year. And he met his future wife, whom he married in Sun Rahu at the age of 27. In Sun Mercury at the age of 30, their son was kidnapped and killed. Moon Dasha from the age of 31 to 41 was a period of relative obscurity. In Moon Rahu, he tried to distance himself from media attention and he left the USA for voluntary exile in Europe. Okay, in Moon Saturn at the age of 37, after almost 4 years away from the limelight, he returned to the USA. Mars Dasha ran from 1943 to 1950, from the age of 41 to 48, and he was denied official war service because President Roosevelt deemed him a neo-Nazi. But then Lindbergh worked as a civilian consultant to the US Air Force in the Pacific and flew multiple combat missions. And post-war, he continued his consultancy work with the Pan-Pacific Air Force. Okay. Rahu Dasha from the age of 48 to 66, it saw Lindbergh get involved in environmental conservation. In Rahu, Jupiter at the age of 52, he won the Pulitzer Prize for his book, The Spirit of St. Louis. In Rahu Saturn at the age of 53 to 55, he began the first of multiple decades-long affairs with 3 women in Germany, with whom he secretly fathered 7 children during 1958 to 1967. So, despite imploring the women to never betray his secret, one of their children figured it out, making it public in the mid-1980s, a decade after his death at 72 during his Jupiter-Mercury Bhukti. Okay, so it's a very curious chart, if I could say. All right. Next. Okay, so this is Nikola Tesla. Okay, whom I regard as one of the most intelligent men to have ever walked the earth. Okay, so he was a Croatian-American inventor, electrical and mechanical engineer, physicist, and futurist, who is best known for his contributions to the design of the modern alternating current, which is known as AC electric supply system. So he was a master of electricity at a time when it was changing modern life, and he developed 700 patents, without which our radio, auto ignition, telephone, AC power generation, and transmission, radio and television would have all been impossible. Okay. Now, Tesla's father was a mechanically inclined priest, while his mother had a photographic memory. And Tesla was a brilliant student in mathematics and physics who went through university at an accelerated pace, memorizing whole books and learning 8 languages, amusing himself in his spare time with cards and chess. And after a brief stint in Paris, he immigrated to New York at the age of 28, and he went to work for Thomas Alva Edison. And within a few years, he had acquired 30 patents for his electrical inventions, among which was the AC technology that enabled Westinghouse to win a major contract for power transmission. Okay. Now, he was very brilliant, as I said, but he was also something of a mad scientist who worked 18 hours a day, sleeping only a few hours at night, always dining alone. He was very attractive and charming. I know everyone has looked at his pictures, but he eluded several attempts of many New York matrons seeking to marry off an eligible daughter. Tesla's only love was science, and he had an obsessive devotion to pigeons, which he fed daily and sometimes nursed back to health with prosthetic devices for broken wings. And his patents had actually made him a millionaire, and he might have become a billionaire if he had not suffered because of his careless disregard for money. Okay, he sometimes infuriated his employees and sponsors, for example, Edison, Westinghouse, and JP Morgan, by proposing to develop technologies that would provide electricity from natural phenomena, for example, lightning, for free distribution to mankind. Okay, so we often accuse poor Edison for being so bad to Tesla, but Tesla was also responsible in a way for his own situation. Okay, so look at the chart. Mars, Moon, and Jupiter share signs with the nodes, but Jupiter lies outside the nodal axis. So this is a potential Kala Sarpa. Okay. And although a strong Jupiter on the nodal axis creates a yoga, this is more like a dosha. Okay. Because Moon on the, Moon with Ketu, it is a eclipse. And Mars, okay, on the same house at Ketu, it is afflicting both Rahu and Ketu. And Saturn is also aspecting Rahu. And it's a Viloma type. With most planets moving towards Ketu, that makes it the starting point of analysis. Okay. Tesla was born into Moon Dasha, Venus Antar Dasha, and as a result, Moon's alignment with the nodal axis creates a direct link to Kala Sarpa. Okay, Moon in the 6th house forms several yogas, as you can see, Chandra Mangal Yoga, Raj Yoga with Mars, again Kesari and Raja Yoga with Jupiter. Venus is combust in the 3rd, but it forms Raja Yoga and Dhanu Yoga with the Sun. And both nodal dispositors are in their own signs. Rahu's dispositor Jupiter forms Kesari Yoga plus Raja Yoga with the Moon and Mars. And Ketu's dispositor Mercury, it forms Buddha-Aditya Yoga with the Sun, but it disposits 6 other planets, making it a significant control planet for the chart. Okay. Now, conventional wisdom says a person with no angular planets will have little impact on the world, but from both Chandra Lagna and Surya Lagna, Mercury and Jupiter each form Mahapurush yogas. That means Bhadra and Hamsa yoga. Okay. And the influence of Mars and Saturn, it creates a bias for signs. Okay. So Tesla also has Pravrajya yoga in the 3rd house mapped in his destiny. And this is formed within parameters, 4 planets, not counting the nodes in 1 house. So Pravrajya indicates concentration to some inordinate degree. Okay. It makes it makes the house very heavy. And in this case, there was this concentration and love for physics, which is a field associated with the 3rd house. Okay. But then for relationships, Pravrajya is like a death knell. Okay. Venus as the 7th lord is the only exaggerated planet, and this is seriously combust in a Dusthana and is associated with two eunuch planets, Mercury and Saturn. Okay. And although these are the karmic karma lords of the 3rd, 7th, and 11th, Mercury's dispositor skews this whole cluster away from sexual intercourse in favor of intellectual discourse. Okay. So 3 planets, Mars, Mercury, and Ketu, occupy the nakshatras of Mars. And for a third of all, bhuktis, these period lords invoked the effects of their star lord Mars, notably themes from the Chitra nakshatra, which is, where Mars is located. Okay, Chitra is the Swa nakshatra, the own nakshatra of Mars, and it causes introversion, profundity, invention, and design. Okay, so many of the pivotal events in Tesla's life occurred in the periods of the nodes, planets linked to the nodes, and planets in exaggerated condition. Okay, now Rahu Dasha from the age 7 to 25 spanned his education and initial pursuit of a scientific career. In Rahu Saturn at the age of 14, he attended high school where a demonstration of electricity by his physics professor entranced him. In Rahu Mercury at the age of 15 to 18, he finished a 4-year term in 3 years. But towards the end, he fell ill with cholera, almost died, and lost the will to live because his father wanted him to become a priest. In Rahu Ketu, after his father promised to send him to the best engineering school if he recovered, Tesla miraculously regained his health. Okay. In Rahu Venus at the age of 19 to 22, he attended university where he studied 18 hours a day, but also became addicted to gambling until he collapsed of nervous exhaustion and was left with, and he had to leave without graduating. Okay, so for the rest of the Dasha, he worked at a telephone company, audited some courses, and spent the rest of his time playing cards. Jupiter Dasha from the age of 25 to 41 saw the flowering of his talent for invention. Okay, in Jupiter at the age of 26, he moved to Paris, then bought a ticket to New York. During Jupiter Saturn, he worked for Thomas Alva Edison, but he lost his job and was reduced to digging ditches for $2 a day. Okay, during Jupiter Mercury at the age of 30 to 32, he was granted 30 patents for various electrical inventions. In Jupiter Ketu at the age of 33, he won a large contract with Westinghouse, not Westinghouse. Okay. In Jupiter Moon at the age of 37, he received an award for his scientific work. In Jupiter Mars at the age of 38, his New York lab caught fire and he lost all his equipment and notes. Saturn Dasha from the age of 41 to 60 saw Tesla working on complex projects involving X-ray technology, remote radio control, and wireless power transmission. In Saturn Mercury at the age of 44, he was sponsored by his financier JP Morgan to build an experimental facility, but it failed to produce results and had to be abandoned. In Mercury Dasha from the age of 60 to 77, he continued to churn out patents, and ultimately that reached a staggering number of 700. Okay, in Mercury at the age of 61, he received the Edison Award, recognizing his life work. In Ketu Dasha, at the age of 77 to 84, Tesla became a recluse, living and dining alone in hotels devoted to pigeons, his living expenses covered by Westinghouse. And in Venus Dasha, at the age of 84 onwards, he suffered fainting spells and heart trouble. He died in Venus at the age of 86, and it was quite a sad end to a very brilliant man. Okay. So that's it. We have completed this journey on Kala Sarpa. We have covered from Rahu in the first house to Rahu in the 12th house. Okay, so it has been a long journey, but it has been worthwhile. As I would say, it has been really worthwhile for me to bring out all this information, which is not usually available in the public domain. You'll not get any other information on Kala Sarpa. You'll not get much information on Kala Sarpa because astrologers are not willing to reveal much here. Okay. And as far as the remedies of Kala Sarpa are concerned, I will make a separate video. Okay, because unfortunate as it sounds, but people are not interested in learning astrology as they are interested in learning the predictive parts of astrology. Okay, but that's the way of the world and we have to accept it the way it is. Okay, so do you have any questions? If not, we can call it a day. Okay, we don't. All right then, guys. Thank you so much for joining. As I said, this was the last class of this course. And I thank you all for being a part of this journey. It has been a learning experience for me, and I hope it has been a learning experience for you as well. Okay. The group will be dissolved after a note of gratitude in the group. And soon we'll have a course on the nakshatras where I'll be speaking, I'll be sharing my wisdom on the nakshatras. So I hope to see all of you in that course as well. Okay. So thank you so much. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Bhanuji. Thank you, Dhanu. And I'll see you soon in yet another class. And hopefully you'll all join together for the Jyotish Foundation class tomorrow. And that is going to continue. Okay, it's like a course which is not ending, but it is going to continue for a long time. Namaste. Om Guru Namaha.